In recent years, the world has witnessed a significant geopolitical shift marked by the ongoing conflict between NATO and Russia, centered on the war in Ukraine. The historical backdrop of NATO-Russia relations is complex, with political strains and military clashes evident in events like Georgia in 2008 and Ukraine in 2014 and 2022. Today, let's explore the evolving dynamics and implications of this intricate geopolitical landscape. In March 2014, when Russia took control of Ukraine's Crimean Peninsula, countries in Central and Eastern Europe, part of NATO, got worried. They thought Russia might do similar things in other countries with many Russian-speaking people. In October 2021, NATO stopped some Russian officials from working at their headquarters in Brussels because they suspected them of secretly being Russian spies. Russia then stopped working with NATO and closed NATO's office in Moscow. This made the relationship between NATO and Russia worse. In 2022, after Russia invaded Ukraine on a large scale, NATO took steps to make itself stronger and more protected. In July 2016, Russia's President Vladimir Putin warned that if Finland joined NATO, there could be military action. Then, in October 2017, the Russian ambassador to Finland said that this could have serious consequences for their relationship. Even though Finland and Sweden are often seen as unofficial NATO members, because they work closely with NATO, Russia's invasion of Ukraine made people in both Finland and Sweden more supportive of joining NATO. In May 2022, both countries applied together to join NATO, and in June 2022, they officially got invited. Finland officially became a NATO member on April 4, 2023. While Sweden's NATO membership is delayed, it's likely to happen within a year. When Finland joined NATO, people expected Russia to react strongly, but there hasn't been a significant military response from Russia. Russia may plan to strengthen its military presence in the Arctic or the Kaliningrad exclave in the Baltics, but immediate action might be limited as long as the conflict in Ukraine continues. In 2020, Alexander Lukashenko, often seen as the leader of Belarus, extended his rule through a disputed election, criticized by the EU for intimidation and violence against protesters, opposition members, and journalists. Since October 2020, the EU has imposed restrictions on Belarus, including banning overflights and access to EU airports for Belarusian carriers after a controversial incident involving a Ryanair flight in 2021. In June 2021, Belarus organized flights to help migrants cross into the EU, irregularly causing the EU and NATO to view it as a hybrid attack to destabilize their borders. Although the crisis lessened by late 2021 due to reduced air links, attempts by migrants to enter the EU persist. The potential for the conflict to become militarized has increased, as seen in large-scale military maneuvers by Belarus and Russia near the Polish border in 2021. Belarus also supported Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. These actions led to additional sanctions against individuals linked to the leadership in the Belarusian capital, Minsk. Further sanctions are likely if Belarus directly joins Russia's war in Ukraine. In early February 2022, tensions between Russia and NATO escalated to a crisis point. Russia deployed a substantial force of up to 190,000 troops along the borders with Ukraine, signaling its readiness to use military force. The situation worsened with the onset of Russia's large-scale invasion of Ukraine, leading to a severe deterioration in relations between Russia and NATO. In response to Russia's actions in Ukraine, the US, EU, UK, and Canada implemented a range of sanctions aimed at curbing Russia's financial resources for its territorial conquest. Concurrently, Russia countered Western sanctions by strengthening its ties with China. Before the invasion, Russia and China had already signed significant agreements for the supply of oil and gas. This included a deal between Rosneft Oil Co. and China National Petroleum Corp., involving supplies of 100 million metric tons, equivalent to 200,821 barrels per day, and 10 billion cubic meters per year of gas, as reported by S&P Global Platts. The conflict between Russia and Ukraine has persisted for over 15 months. Analysts suggest that Russia's strategy is focused on weakening the Ukrainian population's support for resisting the invasion. This involves bombing civilian targets and critical infrastructure. Since early October 2022, Russia has escalated missile and unmanned aerial vehicle strikes on cities throughout Ukraine, employing swarm missile attacks to target essential national infrastructure. Despite Ukraine claiming to intercept around 90% of these attacks with its air defenses, the strikes have caused significant damage. Power generation capacity has been reduced by up to 50%, leading to widespread blackouts. Despite these challenges, a poll conducted by the Kyiv International Institute of Sociology in February 2023 indicated that 87% of respondents in Ukraine still support ongoing resistance to Russia and are opposed to making territorial concessions. Governments and businesses in NATO, countries and Ukraine have alleged that Russian state-affiliated groups are responsible for cyber attacks on digital infrastructure. These cyber conflicts, marked by a cycle of attacks and counterattacks, have heightened geopolitical risks and impacted credit conditions and energy markets. In response, Russia has accused NATO and Ukraine of carrying out retaliatory cyber attacks. Russia's largest internet service provider, Rostelecom, reported a significant number of critical web attacks in 2022. These attacks targeted 600 Russian businesses across various sectors, including government, finance, retail, and telecom. Moscow, being the most attacked region in the country, faced considerable challenges in dealing with cyber threats throughout 2022. The conflict between NATO and Russia has significant implications for companies operating in both regions. In Russia, discrimination against foreign businesses has heightened since the country's invasion of Ukraine in February 2022 and the subsequent economic sanctions imposed by NATO members. Faced with these challenges, many businesses have opted to divest from Russian operations or shut down offices in the country, posing difficulties for NATO-affiliated companies operating in Russia. In response, Russia has implemented capital controls and regulatory restrictions to deter over 1,000 Western companies from divesting their Russian assets. This move is expected to increase compliance risks further. Western companies may encounter obstacles in Russian court cases, with a growing risk of biased judgments as Moscow reacts to Western sanctions. These developments make it increasingly challenging for foreign companies to exit the Russian market and realize the market value of their assets. Prolonged hostilities between Russia and NATO have the potential to destabilize markets and bring lasting changes to supply chains. Russia's primary focus seems to be on gaining acceptance of its current territorial control, while Ukraine insists on maintaining territorial integrity and a complete withdrawal of Russian forces. The path to a resolution remains uncertain, emphasizing the critical need for diplomatic efforts and global cooperation in navigating these complex geopolitical challenges. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to subscribe to our channel for more similar content.